the permission to be recorded on your screen, and if you feel comfortable, just feel free to accept it as well. And just as a reminder, we know that we had the routing link available for you to join in, but in case you haven't done so already, I'm going to set it up in the chat. That way you can sign up for attendance purposes. We will very much appreciate it, but if you haven't done it, and of course that you have a UTSA account, if you could do it at the earliest convenience. All right, so to, of course, respect everyone's time, once again, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Damaris Ibarra, the Assistant Director of the Dreamers Resource Center. And today we have the Dreamers Resource Center panel discussion on our, we have the Dreamer discussion of Dreamer and undocumented student conversations, the immigrant experience from Latin American countries. Joining us today, we have our 4 panelists. We have Ariana Ochoa Magallanes, Diane Lopez, Johanna Hunter, as well as Ronald Bautista. We will allow our panelists to introduce themselves as well, but before we do so, we definitely want to set a couple of community guidelines. First and foremost, please have your mics muted through the panel discussion. We have a block of time dedicated for inquiries from the community once we have concluded our series of questions. Please know that any racist or intentionally hateful comments will not be tolerated and users will be automatically removed from the panel discussion. We honor each other's differences and support all individual and unique identities. And please use this space as a time for learning and self-reflection in your own life experiences as well as biases. So now that we have set our community guidelines, I'll go ahead and allow for panelists to introduce themselves, and we can go ahead and start round robin. Whoever might want to introduce themselves first, they're more than welcome to start. And by introducing, of course, my apologies, you can let us know where you're currently located, your country of origin, as well as your current position as well.
I'll go ahead and start. Unless you want to start, Joanna.
I can start, or you can start, since you said it first.
I'll let you start.
Okay, sounds good. Alrighty, so my name is Johanna Hunter. I am originally from Ecuador, and I actually began a story here in the US in New Jersey, and I moved to San Antonio, Texas in 2015. I'm currently a case manager at the San Antonio AIDS Foundation.
Hi, my name is Diane Lopez. My country, or I was born in the United States, but my family is from Honduras. And right now, so me and my sisters are the only ones from my whole family that are here in the United States. Everybody else in my family is still back in Honduras. And so, yes. And so who I am, I was born in Brownsville, Texas. So from the Valley. And so I have that kind of mix raise up of living in South Texas and then also having the opportunity to grow up in Honduras as a kid from like the age of 2 to 12. And so now I work for UTSA as a librarian here. And so, yeah, that's my role here at UTSA currently is I'm the librarian for public administration, demography, architect and planning, and public administration. But my interests are always in human migration, research, and information justice. So I welcome everybody.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ariadna Ochoa Magallanes. I go by Ari, and I am originally from Mexico. I arrived in the U.S. in 2010, September 2010. So it's 11 years that I've been in the U.S. Currently, I work for the University of Colorado, Denver as the assistant director for the Learning Resources Center. And I have the privilege to work with immigrant students in my current position as well. And before I worked for the Immigrant Services Program at MSU Denver. I am also a board member for the ACLU Colorado. So I am very passionate about human rights and immigration issues, especially. So yeah, that's who I am.
Hi, my name is Bautista. My pronouns are he, him. I also want to be, something I learned lately was to be inclusive of all audiences. So I'm going to start by describing myself. I have short black hair, some facial hair, light green shirt, button up, and a suit jacket because I like to look nice at the office, even if, you know, we're in a pandemic state still, and a whole bunch of computers behind me. You know, I was born in Ecuador. I've been in the US for 22 years, I would like to say. Yeah, 22 years. I moved to Hoboken, New Jersey from Ecuador. I've been there ever since. I work at JP Morgan Chase as Vice President of Marketing to Underserved Communities. And my scope is nationwide with this particular work. I've been at this position since January. And so I'm very excited to share my story with you. I was undocumented for 11 years. You know, I'm one of the lucky ones that had, at least I had a road to getting my citizenship and my green card. So I'm always thankful and honored to be able to share my experiences and support everyone as immigrants.
Thank you very much for your introductions, and we'll go ahead and start with your question. And it sounds like we've touched a little bit as far as your background, but could the panelists let us know, how has your family and culture inspired you to be the person you are today?
If it's okay, I could begin this conversation. And of course, my point of view is having the privilege of having a blue passport and being born in the US, but then acknowledging the fact that all my family is in a different situation. I think how that has shaped me has been to be very empathetic with migration and the migration part, and you know, especially human migration, and acknowledging that human migration is a phenomenon and it's an actual thing that we all do. And so I have applied my, you know, knowing where my roots come from and understanding my roots and understanding the situations that are going on, especially like in Honduras and like the Northern Triangle and all over Latin America, and acknowledging that I have this privilege to go to school and have the opportunity to be educated. I kind of took it in a very, how do I use the skills that I gained throughout my educational journey and how do I apply them to my community? And so being Central American and in the last 14 years, seeing what has gone on within like my mother's home country, and being separated from my family has made me kind of be more like humanizing the narrative story of what's going on in these countries. And that's how I use my position right now, is really humanizing it. And so while in undergrad, I was mad and always emotional about everything that was going on, in grad school, I kind of honed in my emotions and used it to be more productive in conversations with others, and how I approach my research, how I approach grad school. When I approached grad school, I was like, especially from being from the Valley and living half a mile away from the border and having interactions since a young age with individuals who recently arrived into the US, and always supplying them with whatever I could supply them with, if it was a gallon of water or, frijoles or tortillas, something to eat. It was always something that I did as a kid. And so when I got into grad school, I was very adamant that I wanted to do something for my immigrant community, and and work with undocumented students. And that's why I got into information science, because I was like, how do I provide information, to these individuals? That information is so limited and it's so hard to get to. How do I bring the information to them? But then at the same time, also, how do I change the narrative and humanize the situation, especially within libraries, and how libraries approach and working with immigrants? And so my capstone was probably one of the main things that got me to realize, like, okay, what abilities I have, because I created a board game, which is not really fully completed, but I started a board game that had the stories of the Central American caravan and individuals in the Central American caravan, and designed it this way so I could use gameplay and storytelling to build empathy and understanding over mass migration, and especially over the Central American asylum seekers, so that Americans or people who are outsiders to the immigrant experience could understand the plight of what so many of my community members and family might have to experience if they traveled from Honduras to the border of the United States and Mexico. And I say that because I have like 30 cousins, and I think I know like 6 of them. And so my fear was always like, oh my God, what if one of my cousins was in the caravan and walked the 2,000 miles from San Pedro Sula all the way to Tijuana? And so I wanted to bring that face to the situation, because it was just reported on the news and people didn't have a face to apply it to. Like, these are humans. It's not just it's not a flood of soldiers or something like that, how the news media was describing it. So yeah, that's how I've used my identity and being in academia, and how all that. And I'm still working through it. I'm processing a lot of the things that I've gone through, but I'm using this platform to ensure that that we humanize these situations that desperately need the humanization.
I can go next. So family is everything to me, really. I came here with my mom first from Ecuador. My dad followed 2 years after. And, really, my family is where I got at least the foundation for my work ethic and, very specific principles like loyalty, right? And just sticking together, but also a sense of pride and more about standing up for yourself. So my dad had a degree from Ecuador, but because of the status, he couldn't, or at least he was told that he wasn't able to really work on his craft, right? Funny thing, he was in marketing too, just like I am in marketing myself, and so he had to work with what they told him that he could work. He cleaned houses with my mom. My mom was a teacher, an English teacher back in Ecuador. And for him, it was, some people were saying, it's like, why are you wearing those kind of clothes? You should be wearing something old and raggedy in order for when you do cleaning service, because they were doing cleaning on their own. And my dad was like, no, like, this is who I am. Like, he didn't wear a suit, but he wore a button up, he wore pants, he wore a belt. And that really stuck with me. So that's why, even if it's not a formal thing, I like to, dress appropriately, right? And that really projects into your work, and also in terms of culture, really what shaped me was it kind of routed me into the career I'm at. It's not just about showing that, oh, I'm from Ecuador, I'm Latino, so I'm doing marketing for underserved communities. Is about building that portfolio of experiences in the work, on the field, to be able for me to leverage it professionally and get to the job that I'm at right now. And so something that's interesting, and maybe some people can relate in this forum as well, is in Ecuador, culturally, we find our ways to divide ourselves. So, if you're in Ecuador and you say, we're both from Ecuador, where are you from? They're asking, like, are you from the highlands or are you from the coast? And then if you're both from the coast, it's like, which city on the coast? And then we're like, oh, Guayaquil. Oh, okay, I'm from Guayaquil too. And it's like, what part of Guayaquil? Are you from the north or the south? And if you're both from the same region, it's like, what school did you go to? And so we find our ways to divide ourselves. And that kind of goes out the window when it came to coming to the US, because there's so much diversity that then people really come across like, you're from Ecuador, me too. Finally, there's somebody just like me. And I found that the first time that I wanted to really be involved in the community, I was like, well, which one's my community? So I went with the Ecuadorian community. I did a Google search. I found an organization, and I started getting involved. It was on education and giving is grassroots organization. So it was grassroots fundraising. I became executive director of that organization. We were giving scholarships to students of Ecuadorian descent in the tri-state area here in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. It was $1,000 each for 5 students, which was big because it's still going on up to this date. And really show that as a community, we can provide that support and that aid, even if it's not just the amount, but the recognition, like that you are building yourself professionally, and we're here for you, and we're here to recognize your efforts. So that really shaped, I guess that's where I got started, because I was doing that while I was undocumented and still going to school. And I wanted to implement what I was learning in school, because I didn't know if there was a way that I could in any other way. And that really routed me to then doing multicultural marketing in an agency, and then going into a nonprofit health insurance company, also multicultural marketing. And I just dove right in, and being able to bring that up in the meetings. Representation really matters, and it's not so much in terms of diversity and inclusion marketing that's like a box. It's more about, we need that diversity lens across the board: product, marketing, community development, everything. So it's not that you are put in a box, is that everybody needs that. Think about it in terms of business. Business, they always tell you, you have to diversify your portfolio. You have to diversify. It's the same thing. You have to diversify your human resource in order for you to see the opportunities that others don't. So that's how family and culture has shaped me into the person I am today.
Okay, I can go next. I think for me, family, like with my colleagues here, family is everything. And it was family who really pushed me to be more than what I thought that I could be. When I was in Mexico, I was in a very controlled environment because I was in an abusive household because of my dad, and he never wanted us to leave home, just to go to school, go to get groceries, and then go back. So imagine the pandemic life that you're living, but that's what I had growing up. So that really stopped me from having all the social kind of environment that people are allowed to grow in those social skills. So I was always very quiet, and I'm still very quiet, very shy when I meet someone at the beginning. And that was very scary to me. But my mom was always encouraging me, you can do it. I know that we're not in the best situation right now, but you're going to get out of here. And when we had the chance to come into the US, I was already an adult with no social skills, but my mom, when we came, she was like, you can do this. I believe in you. So she was the one encouraging me to go into college. That was something that I always wanted to do, but I was very scared of doing that. And my mom was like, you can do it. Come on, you can just complete that application. Go ahead and apply for those scholarships. And when I started college, I just wanted to be kind of invisible. I was just like, I want to go to school and I want to just complete this, and that's it. But a lot of people started seeing things in me that I didn't, and started encouraging me to get involved in different organizations and getting an on-campus job and things like that. So I started creating that community that I never had before. And most of those connections that I made were a lot surrounded in culture. Many of them were immigrants like me. I had some professors who helped me like develop my English skills, and I just created that people, that group of people around me that really helped me move forward and helped me believe in myself. And then because I was an English learner, and then I was a first-gen student in college, there were a lot of obstacles that I had to go through, and having that support from people, from my family, from my community really helped me move forward. But it was still very difficult, and I really wanted to make a change. So when I had the opportunity of being more involved and being more of a leader in the community, I started doing things that will allow me to be involved in helping others like me. And if it was something in the academic side, I would do that. And I was very lucky to have good supervisors who let me be myself and also bring my own experiences and to the work that I was doing. And that's how I was able to move on to what became my dream of helping people, helping immigrant students like me. And I am very passionate about education, so that kind of led me into the pathway that I am now, and my current position, where I get to work with students and help them understand how to learn, but also I get to work with immigrant students. I have a very supportive supervisor, and I told her about my passion, and she was like, yeah, you're good, bring it in. And this program that you're supervising now, you can include all your ideas and develop it into more than what it was originally, and have a broader scope of things that we are providing for immigrant students. So if it wasn't for that support and that I've gotten from my community, from my family, I don't think I would have made it here. So it's definitely what has allowed me to keep going. And sometimes when I'm down, I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. It's my community who keeps telling me, you got this, you can continue. Just go ahead and do it, even if it's scary, you can do it. So I think that's what's going to keep pushing me to be better and just to keep going.
Okay, so now it's me. So for me, like, again, like all the panelists, family is everything. I think that's part of our culture, Latin American culture. And my dad has always instilled in me that family is everything, that we're supposed to support each other, that we're supposed to be happy in our achievements. So with that being said, he always said that we should always help our friends, because at the time, just like Ronald, I was also undocumented. So we were undocumented for, I would say 10 years, 11. So most of my friends were also immigrants, the same situation that I was in. And it's funny because even though my parents were working, we were also needing some things. Our friends were needing things, and we will share resources. And I think because we share resources, that's why I started volunteering at other organizations back in New York and then New Jersey. I started volunteering in this organization that served the Hispanic community in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, sometimes Pennsylvania. People all over the world will stop at that organization. So there I met a lot of wonderful people that show me resources that I could share with the community. So some people will come in with health problems. So they will tell me, oh yeah, this person can go to this clinic that serves the Hispanic community, or that they speak in Spanish. Or I also became the translator of the agency. So I will translate a lot for all the clients coming in, especially for immigration services, because it also provided immigration services, food stamps, Medicaid, Medicare, everything. It was just like a one-stop. And then I will send like people to other agencies. And so because of that, because I was able to do that, and I was undocumented, of course, at the time, I think that's what led me to my career. Because right now I'm a case manager, even though I work with a specific community, the people living with HIV, within that community, there are also undocumented clients. And I find myself translating for the different departments. Like I go testing, I go to the clinic, I translate for doctors, for other case managers. And then I'm able to explain their client's situation, and also in my perspective, because I was an immigrant. So I can relate with what they're going through. So I think that's what led me here, is just being an immigrant, that having the experience of being undocumented. And now I actually became a citizen back in January. So I can relate.
Thank you so much for all of your responses. Pretty much like my heart is very warm for what I'm listening, and all the work that all of you have done for the immigrant community. And I know we touched base a little bit in college life, but as an immigrant or as a first generation college student in the US, how were you able to connect with college life? What were some challenges, if any, you face in college? And what resources do you utilize to overcome them?
I can go. Like I mentioned, English was one of the main things that I had as a challenge. Like in Mexico, I took English classes, but like you take Spanish or French classes here in high school. So by the end of high school, you forget everything about that. And maybe you can say like, where's the bathroom and stuff like that, but that's it. So when I came to the US and I really wanted to start college, I had to go through the GED first because I didn't graduate from high school in Mexico. So I took it in Spanish, but then I wanted to go to college, so I had to do like the English test that came with it. And then I started college and my English was not great, but I started to just talk with my professors, and I was very nervous and very scared, but I was like, hey, English is not my first language, so I really struggled with that. And most of them were very nice. I have one of them who took the time to sit with me through office hours. And instead of going through what we covered in class, it was sometimes just like a grammar session. And she will teach me, okay, this is how this works. And this is why you will say on instead of in and stuff like that. And I know that that was something that she didn't have to do, but she still did that for me. And I started using resources on campus too, going to the writing center, going to the different services that we had available. I did get some issues with the writing center because they were like, we're only allowed to tell you if your content is good. We are not allowed to tell you exactly if your grammar is bad and why is it bad, because you're in college now and you're supposed to know those things. And I was like, yes, but I am an immigrant. I am learning English at the same time that I'm taking my classes. And many of them were just like very strict and were like, I can't help you, sorry. So they just check on the content of my papers and that was it. And then I will turn them in and professors will be like marking all the things and this is not how you say it. And it's things like it's scientist, not scientific, and things like that. And that was one of the things that really got to me. And now in my position, I'm more of a, if a student needs this type of support, that's what you give the student, especially if you are in a position to do that. So if you are a writing center and a student needs help with grammar, help them with grammar. If you are a tutor, help them with what they need. And that's one of the things that really motivates me for the work that I do. Because it was very challenging, and it was very challenging for me to also find people who were like, why are you even taking classes? Like, your English is not at college level yet, and you should probably stop, go take some classes, and then come back. But again, community is everything. So it was people who were like, it's okay, you can do it. And everything that you wrote makes sense, but this is why it's wrong. And this is how you write it. And this is how you say it, things like that. So I wish we were a little bit more open with students who are learning. And another thing was people just treating me as if I was dumb. And I was like, I promise that I have all these things in my head that I want to say. I just can't because I don't know how to articulate them yet. And it was very frustrating to go through that, and being perceived as not as intelligent as others.
No, I completely relate to that. I would actually like say things and didn't make sense, and I'm like, I know what I want to say, but my mouth is not there yet. That was usually my struggle at the beginning. And actually, I learned through immersion. So like 1 year, 8th grade. So I came in very early. That helped me. It was kind of like, here, learn how to swim or drown. So I was taking those courses while I was learning English the way that people in the US who are born and raised here learn English, right? Without knowing really English. I thought I knew English because I used to get good grades in English class back in Ecuador until I got here, and I was like, no. Some part of my experience with college was so my dad at the beginning, he was like, no, don't worry about it. I'll do the working, you do the studying, but that only lasted really 1 year because my dad got diagnosed with ALS. And so I had to take the cleaning business instead of him. So I was struggling with college life really, or having one, because I was working. And so I was only going to school at nighttime. And when I transferred from the community college to the state, like the 4-year university, something that when I went to ask, like, hey, so I heard that I have to pay out of state tuition. I just came in clean. I was like, I'm undocumented. This is what's the situation. Is it true? And then the person said, yeah, you have to pay out of state college tuition. This was a long time ago. I'm older than I look. And so that person said at the admissions office, like, be thankful you can even go to school. And I was like, lady, I'm paying for this. I'm not getting financial aid. I'm not getting scholarships. So no. And then I went back and I kept asking friends of mine, they're like, just stay quiet, wait for the bill. And then when the bill came, it was in-state tuition. So I quietly just started paying. And this was way before the Dreamers movement was really strong and a lot bigger than what it is, like what it is right now. Something that helped me with building more of that college life or taking advantage of that was taking the time to have a Saturday class, because then I was able to go into the campus, kind of like go to class and then interact with other students, study there a bit, because that like going to a 6:50, 6:30 class right after doing the cleaning of 3, 5, 4 houses that day, you don't have any time really to socialize with other college students. So that's something that helped me solve that. And also like having the mentality of like, how do we solve it? Like, don't try to put me down. We're here. This is my situation. How do we solve it? Like, all right, I have to fix, like, I need to learn these things. How do we make it happen with where I am at right now? Instead of telling me like, you should have been here. And I've taken that experience and that work ethic throughout everywhere that I've gone, and that helps me in my teams right now. I'm not like there to blame somebody. It's like, all right, this happened, how do we fix it? So that's what I have to share about that.
My experience as like a first gen student is I find it kind of like interesting one, just because like my mom didn't have the opportunity to get formal education. I think she probably went up to like the first grade, and then she had to start working. And while my dad had the opportunity to go to high school here in the US, he was also a migrant worker, field worker, labor worker. And so he was constantly always like out of the house between like 7 and 7, right? And so the challenges that I faced a lot was still with English, because I learned that I had a learning disability. I was dyslexic. And so how do you convey this information to a parent who has no formal education and doesn't understand the concept, but what does it mean to have a child who's dyslexic? And so, throughout all my education, like my parents weren't really able to support me and help me. And while my sisters were like the Golden Star students, A+ students, I was that one student who was always struggling. And so, yeah, when I got into college, it took me 7 years to finish my bachelor's degree, because I was just a horrible writer, a horrible communicator. And it wasn't, it wasn't my fault. There was just the resources that weren't there. I didn't understand what it meant to be dyslexic, and having those conversations with my mom was impossible to have. But I'm glad that I did have a professor realize going, hey, I like your concepts, but the way you're presenting it is horrible. Like, you're not being clear, you're not being concise. And so like that's when I realized, okay, I have to get tested, I have to go find services. And it was really challenging, because I had to do everything myself, right? I had to go find the testing center, I had to go to communicate with the disability center. And just like Ronald, I look older than I appear. And so this is like a long time ago. And so, services for first gen were not there. And, and for students that had dyslexia, like that whole, like, what is dyslexia? What does that mean? And what does that mean when you're bilingual and you were raised speaking 2 languages while you were educated in English? It really, and I spoke Spanish only at home, and like, it didn't mean anything, right? And, it was just that challenge. And so, yeah, slowly and surely, I got better in my English. I got better in my writing. And I really have to, give thanks to the writing centers and tutoring. And just like how our other panelists said, I used to be a tutor. And after graduating from bachelor's, I became a tutor for statistics. And so I I knew the challenges that I faced, and I was just like, I don't want anybody else to face this, no matter if they're proficient in English speaking or they're like me, who's, if you would have heard me speak 5-10 years ago, I wouldn't sound the way I sound right now. I'm completely different as a communicator now. And, you know, the challenges I did face was, you know, being raised in a very heavy Mexican American community area, but always not being Mexican. You know, that was always a challenge because I didn't have that sense of community. I didn't know who were the other Central American students. I didn't know who were the other Hondureño students, or like, I would always just be happy, like how Ronald and Joanna mentioned, like, if you found someone that was from Ecuador, you just get excited, and that's how I am, right? I get super excited when I meet another Central American student, because it brings that community to me that I've directly have been wanting since I was like 12 years old. And it's just, yeah, it was a challenge, you know, being representation wasn't there for me. My experiences got overlooked. And if someone found out that I was Central American, it was just, you know, not the positive side of it. It was always looked down, you know, and having to fight that and having to deal with that, and, you know, going through school and just always feeling alone, because, you know, I was. I sometimes still feel that I'm still like the only Central American person in any space I take into. And it's sad, but at the same time, I'm very vocal about it. And you know, and so, you know, it's just how Diana is mentioning, like, I've gone through these things, and now I just use it as my platform of saying this needs to stop. I don't want someone who has shared experiences like mine, or someone from my community, the immigrant community, to struggle because they don't feel accepted. They don't, you know, I always want to apply the resources. And I think, you know, as a librarian, I really take that to heart. I sit with my students. I take the time that they need. I listen to what they have to say. I always welcome students to just come in and use me as a soundboard. If it's just having to like wrap their idea around how they want to approach a research project or a question, and, you know, how do they find the resources? Because I knew that struggle. I knew that how frustrating that could be, and how depressing it could also feel when you feel that everything is against you. But yeah, like how, like that first question, like I use like, I get my strength from the immigrant community because it's my roots. And I get my strength from Campesinos because that's my roots. And, you know, and so I just always remind myself where I come from, because where I come from is instilled in me, you know, knowing where you come from and knowing how you could help. But yeah, college was not fun. It wasn't until graduate school that it changed. And it just happened because my mentor, he was Colombian, he was from Colombia. He worked in El Salvador and Nicaragua and all over Central America with different radio, especially community radio. And he understood the struggles that I was going through, and his motivation, and him always telling me, like, while you feel like you're alone in the work that you do, you are not alone. There is, every time I've done something, it's always been like, I love being surrounded by my community and being that resource for my community. Like, ask me questions, I'm here. I'll help you find what you need to find.
Okay, now my college experience was also very, very challenging, especially because it took me, like, I have a brother and I have cousins that also came almost at the same time. So they picked up English like fast. And for me, it took me the longest time to learn English. So I was taking a lot of ESL classes while in high school, but I was also taking classes in English. So ESL was the only class that I could speak a little bit of Spanish. And then when I graduated from high school, all my professors actually donated so I could go to college. And I thought that was very, very nice of them. And so that's how I was able to pay my first semester. And it was funny because when I went to register for college, it was very scary because I went by myself. My dad just dropped me off and said, hey, I have to go to work, go and register. So I didn't know what registration was. I didn't know that I had to take a placement test. I was lost, like very, very lost. And they gave me this sheet where it has like all the classes, like all the prerequisites. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So somehow I registered for my classes. And I guess one of the professors noticed that I was really, really, really lost. And he said, you know, I do notice that you do the work. And did you know that there is a library here? And I was like, no. And then he showed me, oh, yes, there is a library. There are tutoring services. And then he introduced me to this professor that was actually teaching in the library for free. He was teaching like how to read, how to write, speech. So I went there, like I ate all the books in that library. Like I learned about different cultures. And that professor that was there in the library, his name is Dad. So he will, okay, read this book and then we'll talk about it. And then write an essay. So that's how I learned to write an essay. And then he was like, you know what? You don't need to be in ESL anymore. I think you're ready to go to English 101. I think that's how they call it. I was like, okay. So he told me where to go to take that test in order to take the other classes that I needed to take. So I was in a community college, so it took me 5 years to graduate when a regular student, it takes 2. And because I was undocumented at the time, I didn't have financially. So I was studying full-time and working full-time. And it was challenging, but I was willing to do it. Don't get me wrong, my brain was fried. I don't know how I was able to retain the information while doing those things full-time, but I did it. And then once I was able to transfer to a university, like 4-year college university, it was easier for me because now I spoke English. Now I knew that there were resources. And it was funny because I had some classmates that were in the same situation as I was in the beginning. So I was like, hey, you need to go here. And I didn't even know that I had an advisor when I was in college. So I told him, like, hey, you have an advisor. You need to go and talk to them if you're struggling. You need tutoring. So I will say that it was very, very challenging in the beginning, but it got better because I put the work. So if you want to improve your English, improve your circumstances, you have to work for it because it's free. Like you do have to work and put the time. It's just very, very challenging to do it.
Thank you for all of the stories. There, as in the chat is saying, it's like all of these are very, very beautiful stories. And definitely, we have one more question related to advice. And we want to be respectful of your time, of course. So our question for you, and then after this question, we do want to open it for the attendees to ask you questions as well. But if you can give any advice to students that identify as Dreamer and or undocumented, what would that be?
I will say don't give up. Because for some time I did give up. I was like, why am I studying if I can't work? But you know what, if you study and you volunteer, and once you find that path to get a green card or get a citizenship, then you're going to be able to use your education and your experience in volunteering. And they will acknowledge that experience. And so don't give up, just keep on going because it gets better.
I want to add to that. I would say, and I saw one of the questions too about like employment and adjusting. Something they cannot take away from you is employer identification number. So if you don't have if you don't have a green card, use that to leverage it to be self-employed. And then you could be an advisor, you can be a consultant. That's the way that I know a lot of people. And then I'm just like, why didn't I know this before? And then you can build your portfolio, doing volunteer work, working with organizations in whatever craft you want. There's definitely need for help out there. It's not an internship, it's not paid internship. You're doing volunteering because you want to gain the experience. On the side, you could still put that together and say, hey, I'm doing this as a consultant, as an advisor. Nobody's going to really ask in terms of like where you go to school or anything like that. And listen, in this summer, I just finished my master's program. I found out thank you. And I found out it's with George Washington University. It was an online program that was geared towards Latin America. It's fully in Spanish. And it was 30% cheaper because of that. So just keep your options open, just keep listening, keep going to seminars, keep going to talks, and you'll find those resources. Just like Johanna said, don't give up. Don't take no for an answer. There's always some kind of way. That's why networking is very important as well. So keep it open because there's a way to do it.
I'll say, don't be ashamed of who you are. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of everything that you have accomplished and the things that you will accomplish. Because things are not over, even if we see a lot of awful things going on in the news. So just know that you're not alone, and know that you belong here, and that you have support, even when sometimes you can feel alone. There are a lot of us who are here to support you all. So find your people. They make you strong, and they help you get over difficult situations.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't give up. There's a community out there that wants to see all of you succeed and flourish and reach what you want to reach your goals, your dreams. And yeah, like there's going to be people on the road who are going to tell you, oh no, you should do it this way, or going to discourage you some weird way because that's their problem, but always remind yourself, remind yourself that that you do have purpose and that there's a reason why you're here, and that you have people who are readily available to do what they need to do to make sure that you get those resources and the materials that you need to be successful. And if you are a UTSA student, I'm here for you guys. Like, that's my thing, is making sure that students succeed. And and if I love seeing people flourish and succeed and do what they want to do.
Thank you for all your advice and suggestions. And of course, we heard a lot about looking out into the resources that the university has, whether it's tutoring, the writing center, for all of our students that identify as Dreamer and Undocumented. If you are unfamiliar with resources, please feel free to stop by in our office. Feel free to send us an email at dreamers@utsa.edu, and it will help you find those resources. So I do want to give some time to the community. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, feel free to either write in the chat. You can also unmute yourself, and or if you have like specific question for a specific panelist, you're also more than welcome to ask it in the chat or by unmuting yourself. And thank you so much, Brandy, for giving the information for the Dreamers Resource Center. We are located at the HEB Student Union, the 2.206. And also, Ronald has opened his LinkedIn. His information is in the chat, as well as Diane's email is in the chat. So if we don't have any questions, or maybe you think of a question later on and you say, hey, I wish I could have asked this, just feel free to send that question to the Dreamers email, and we'll make sure to connect you with the panelists that was in today. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their stories, their wise advice. Oh, and I'm sorry, it seems like we might have a question. Cynthia, do you have a question? Sure.
Was that me, somebody's?
Yes, Cynthia.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, so this is a little bit of an offshoot, because I have a student who is a citizen, but comes with a lot of language barriers, something I had never seen before, because usually our students who come in with that type of language barrier usually have to take, you know, the TOEFL or ESL type courses before. And so is there any duplicate kind of resources? Like, so I know that she's not necessarily fall under, you know, undocumented or immigrant or anything like that. But are there resources for students? Because I hear a lot of the stories today, and I feel like she's challenged with a lot of the same things that our panelists are saying now. And it was very difficult because I didn't really have those resources. I had never come into contact with a student who actually is, you know, she's paying state tuition. She came from a high school here in the Valley. So I was just wondering perhaps if there were some resources for her as well, or anything that I can share with her, or that you know of that would possibly assist her in her transition from her high school to here. Can you still hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can still, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of having almost a similar experience as your student, you know, going to high school here in the States, going to high school in the Valley. The things that I did to help me improve my English, even that I was educated in English, I utilized audiobooks and books together and use that method to kind of improve my reading, especially for classes if I had to. I think one of my favorite classes in college was Introduction to Science Fiction Literature. And it was just, I love that class, but the one thing I had to do was, how do I read and make sure that I understand what I'm reading? And so I would find audiobooks and read, and essentially do read-alongs, like what you would do as a kid growing up, learning how to read. You would listen to something and read, immersion reading. Thank you, Amy. I would do that because that's how I bettered my English and better my writing, and you know, and helped me focus, because I also was someone who had ADD and ADHD, and those were like the things that I did to help myself with that. And reading out loud was another method. I know it's the most scariest thing to do, to read out loud, but I would read out loud to either myself or you know, I read out loud to my dogs. If I was reading something, it was just, you know, making sure that I was comprehending what I was reading. And then of course, when I got into graduate school, I think that fear came back, right? And so I really kind of leaned on to my peers, and would like invite a lot of my peers like, hey, let's go get coffee, let's go get something to drink. I want to talk about what we read for class because I want to make sure I understand what I'm reading. And so those were like the things that I know with my own language barriers and my own learning disabilities. I applied those. I applied audiobooks and books and conversations and it's I think the main thing is being vulnerable with what your situation is and allowing people to know your situation, because I think that helped me. Because if I told the faculty or my professor or, you know, someone like, this is what I'm facing, these are the issues that I'm coming across, then they have a different perception and they go, okay, I can now take a couple of steps back and make sure that you are succeeding at the level that you should be at. And yeah, but those are like the things I did. Immersion reading.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I will add, I think reading comprehension is one of the main things that I see a lot of students struggling with. And I teach, and I see that in my classes too, students who are immigrants who have difficulties understanding the questions that I'm asking for discussion boards or assignments. And that's something that I struggled with too. One thing that helped me was searching on Google, just like reading comprehension exercises. And they will give you a text and then some questions to answer based on that text. And then most of the time you'll find also answers to that, like a key to the answers. So it will explain again what the reading is about. So having that was very helpful. And also asking my friends to correct me every time that I made a mistake. And I felt bad sometimes. I was like, oh, I made a mistake again. But it really helped me when they were like, hey, actually, this is the word that you're looking for. Or if I texted them, I would be like, this is how you spell it. So having that support from my community and also from professors, because I did approach them and I was like, I really need your help. So as many corrections as you can make if you have the time, I really appreciate that. And I will see their corrections and I will really understand why I was wrong. And yeah, audiobooks. There's an application that I use. It's like a Chrome extension. It's read aloud. So it reads PDFs as well if you use that. And so that's helpful too.
Thank you too.
Thank you. And of course, panelists, we do have a couple more questions in the chat, but of course I want to be respectful of your time. But if you can answer some of, or the couple of questions that we have in, is there any kind of advocacy work that can be done for immigrants, dreamers, refugees? And I see some nods, a lot of nods.
I know that there are some organizations like Raíces or American Gateways that do accept volunteer work. So you can look into those places and see if you can volunteer.
Yeah, there are other organizations, even national organizations, Immigrants Rising, they're always looking for volunteers so you can do things on your campus. So that's a good organization too. And other local organizations are pretty sure they're very happy to have any volunteers.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's always advocacy work needing to be done at all types of levels. And you know, it is sometimes you have to go look for it. But if you're ever in the Pacific Northwest, especially in Seattle, I recommend Casa Latina. It's an immigrant, day labor, domestic worker center, where I interned for almost close to a year, and I did wage theft claims. And that's what I would do. I would interview day laborers and domestic workers and who had wage theft occurring in their day to day, and and just kind of like hear their stories, listen to their stories, and make sure that they got their pay, they got their money for the job and their compensation. And so, You know, sometimes it is just you just digging around and looking, but you know, there's so many organizations out there that want those who have a close relationship with the issues that they're wanting to help and the communities that wanted to resolve. And you know, and so yeah, that's I say yes, there's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you. And our last question is from Alex, and they say, I find it inspiring hearing a thing of unity, but more importantly, not wanting others to go through the same struggles. However, why do you think you think that way and not like others? Well, it was tough for me, it will be tough for you, so deal with it mentality.
I think that has a lot to do with culture. When I was growing up, I live in this neighborhood where if someone was struggling financially and couldn't afford food, all the community will bring a plate to their table. Or if someone can pay for electricity and they needed to do homework, we will open our doors for people to come in and just use the lights at our place. In growing up with that, even if I was not allowed to go out that much, but seeing that will happen in my community, and then having my mom always tell me, she always said, leave people better than how you find them. Just help them grow however you can. So having that repeated to me through all the years while I was growing up, and seeing my mom be an example of that. She was always supporting people and helping people. It just is something that I value very much, and I don't want others to struggle if I can do something to help them. And it's not like I'm going to come and save you kind of mentality, not at all. It's just like I know how hard that is, and no one should be alone while going through that.
You know, for me, I don't believe in that you must lift yourself from your own bootstraps, because what happens if you don't have boots or you don't have the straps? And I learned from, like, my grandmother really taught me the aspect of what it means to be empathetic and what it means to be have empathy for others. Because like I grew up, like my mom's side of the family, we're from the northwest part of Honduras. So we're part like from this little the department of Ocotepeque, from this little pueblito in the mountains called San Francisco del Valle, and everybody knows everybody. And I was raised in that type of community where it was like, if I left the house for any reason, I would have to make sure that I stopped by wherever my grandmother told me to stop by. Like, here's an encargo, take it to, Doña Lucha. And I would be like, okay. And then if I was out and about and the people recognize me, they're like, la niña de mamamita. And I would be like, oh yeah. And they would be like, oh, take this to your grandma. And I'd be like, okay, take it to my grandma. And so I had that instilled into me, like, you have to be available and welcoming to your community and to your neighbors and to those around you, because one day you're going to need help and you're going to need support. And so you always must, provide it and give it, so then you could receive it equally, and out of a good place, right? And those are like the values that were instilled into me, especially, like I said, my family they're campesinos. And if you don't know what campesinos is, it's peasant farmers. And it's about community and growth and being there for each other and supporting each other. And those are the values that were installed into me. And and that's how I carry myself throughout my own educational journey, throughout my own path, is, always trying to be available for others, because I know one day I'm going to need help. And of course, in this world, we cannot do things on our own. If we want to grow and flourish and be successful, we need to learn how to work with each other and support each other in our own ventures. And sorry, all my dogs just came running in from outside right now. But yeah, like for me, it's like I love to see people flourish, and I love to see people grow, and those are things that my grandmother taught me, and having that background just always makes me want to just give and support.
Thank you so much. And so sorry, Johanna.
Yes, sorry. And just to add what Diane and Ariana said, yes, that's cultural. I did have a friend back when I was in college, and he was from Guatemala. And at the time I was, undocumented. And he did make a comment saying, oh yeah, they have to struggle just like me. And that shocked me. I didn't say anything because I was taught that if someone says something ugly, I will say, just to put it that way, you have to react with kindness. So I always helped him and showed him that immigrants are not bad. They didn't have to struggle, that we can work together as a team to keep moving forward in whatever your dreams are, So I would suggest that if you encounter that, just ignore it and keep on going and keep showing kindness.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all of your responses. I know attendees are appreciative of all your responses and your time and honesty and vulnerability. Thank you, everyone. This has been wonderful. I know it's lunchtime for a lot of you, so thank you so much for joining. It has been a very beautiful experience that we have shared today. And I'll stop recording, but of course, if